So I went back after 30 years and watched the classic kids TV anthology series, Are You Afraid of the Dark? So after all these years, how does it hold up? Well, we'll talk about that, and also I'm gonna rank every episode in season 1. All right, so the original run of the Are You Afraid of the Dark TV show on Nickelodeon ran from 1992 to 1996, and the 90s really was a hell of a time to be a kid. We had this show, and then obviously we also had the Goosebumps show. Let me know down in the comments, were you a Goosebumps kid? Were you an Are You Afraid of the Dark kid? Or both. So basically the concept around Are You Afraid of the Dark is this group of teenagers that call themselves the Midnight Society. And they get together around a campfire at a secret location, and then each episode is basically one member of the group telling the group a scary story. But yeah, if you've never seen Are You Afraid of the Dark, that's essentially the concept around this show. Also keep in mind, as I go through this list of episodes, certain websites have certain episodes in season 1 and season 2 or season 3. It's just kind of all over the place. So my list of what is in season 1 is basically just what's on Amazon. I just figured that would be the easiest way to do it. But anyways, it is now time for me to submit my ranking of season 1 to the Midnight Society. So, all right, how the hell do I rank season 1 of Are You Afraid of the Dark after 30 years? Well, coming in last place at number 9 is going to be episode 4, The Tale of the Twisted Claw. So basically the reason why I have this particular episode in last place is because it's kind of one of those episodes, it's like, all right, we've kind of been there, done that, and overall it's also just a pretty boring episode. It's kind of like the classic genie in a bottle story. You get some wishes, and there's going to be negative consequences for those wishes, so use them wisely, but instead of a genie bottle, they have like this weird, creepy claw, just to give it kind of an eerie little twist to it. So basically this episode is about these two kids that like to prank this old lady that lives in an old, creepy house. You know, that lady in a neighborhood that kids like to tell stories about, like, oh, don't go over there, that lady's weird, or her house is haunted. Well, these kids like to prank her. Even at one point, they just go right up to her door and they're just spraying shaving cream right in her face. I mean, these kids kind of had a little something coming, you know, they're little shits. But then on Halloween night, they go trick-or-treating to her house and she kind of invites them in. It's weird. It's a little bit eerie. They're like, hey, you know, we would like to, you know, continue trick-or-treating. We want to get some more candy. And she's like, don't worry, I'm going to make this worth it for you. Don't you worry. And she pulls out this box with this claw in it that they can make some wishes on the claw. Like I said, kind of like a lamp situation. So yeah, next the kids are basically like, is this even real? Should we believe this? Should we try it? I don't know. We're kind of a little uneasy about it. Maybe we should, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't. But then we transport to them at school, and one of the kids wishes that he can get first place in their track meet coming up. This kid always wins. This other kid just always wins. Nobody can beat him, and this kid makes the wish to beat him in the track meet. And I don't know, it's just really, really corny. I mean, you could say it's so bad that it's good in a little bit of a way, but the track meet, very low budget, very weird, very 90s in so many ways. But so a dog just all of a sudden appears during the track meet behind a tree, runs out, trips this kid right before he's about to win, which apparently breaks his leg. Not believable at all, just based off of what we see in the actual episode. But then that's how the kid wins the race, so he's kind of happy about it, but he kind of feels a little bit guilty at the same time, and his friend's kind of like, what did you do, man? That was not a good idea at all. And then, of course, as the episode goes on, they actually kind of in this one accidentally wish. Usually that's how it goes down. Like, they accidentally wish that one of the kids' parents were gone, and then the police just end up calling, and they're like, yeah, your parents are dead. And then, of course, they reverse the spell, you know, everything is okay, and then all of the bad stuff basically gets undone. Very predictable episode, but I would say some of the main reasons why I have this episode in last place is because it's just kind of corny, it's not creepy at all, and overall, it's just a lame episode. It's like, I don't remember who submitted this to the Midnight Society, but we are gonna temporarily ban you from the society, so you better come up with a better story next time, or else yeah, you might be gone for good. All right, coming in at number 8 is going to be episode 9, The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun. So normally, I like Leprechaun stuff, love the Leprechaun franchise, so I was excited for this episode, but yeah, this is not a great episode. very forgettable. There are some fun effects in this episode though, just with like the overall design of the leprechaun look and of the evil guy. I like that aspect of this episode, but basically this kid wants to be an actor. He wants to be in plays, and kind of his mentor, or just the main person in the play, is like this little bit of a weird guy who drinks this tea that kind of everybody on set is, oh, yo, don't worry about that. That's just kind of his secret little tea that, just inspires him to be really creative. So I'm sitting back, I'm like, oh, he's probably just one of those things. He's got like a bunch of THC in the tea, or maybe he slips a little whiskey in there as well. I don't know, but that seems like most logical explanation for me. Well, not exactly. It turns out there's a lot more going on with the tea. It's kind of like a little bit of a magical potion, and this guy also turns out to be this banshee thing, which every 7 years he has to capture a soul to, I believe, keep him alive. And now it's kind of the 7-year mark, and he's got his eye on this little kid. So earlier in the episode, this little kid meets this little shaman guy. He's trying to get some herbs for the guy that works in the play, but then the shaman guy starts to help the kid reveal and find out what's really going on here. And then the little shaman guy helps the kid basically to defeat this guy. Like I said, some kind of fun set design. They're playing off of the whole school play thing, which is okay for me. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Phantom of the Auditorium episode. But yeah, they have this little fight at the end. They're using magic. The kid at one point, like everything does kind of go through the plan for the evil guy. It kind of works. The kid turns into this frog that he'll basically have and keep forever in a glass jar. But the little shaman guy comes back, fights him, and then basically just defeats him. But overall, it's just kind of a mediocre episode. I can't imagine this episode being like a top 3 in the season for me personally, just because there's not enough happening there. I do like the leprechaun stuff. Like I said, I'm kind of a sucker for that little subgenre, but it's okay at times, but overall, like a mainly kind of forgettable episode. Okay, up next at number 7 is going to be episode 7, The Tale of the Nightly Neighbors. So in this episode, we're basically following this kind of normal, average suburban family. The 2 kids in the family notice at nighttime, somebody's moving in across the street, and they're kind of like, okay, that's a little weird. Plus, they're kind of acting a little bit weird. They're looking at them. They're noticing that they're kind of staring at them through the window and things like that. As the kind of episode moves along, as these people move into the neighborhood, people in town start to act weird, like they're really sick. They're starting to get really pale. Even their parents are starting to act that way. And also they're noticing that all the people who are acting a little bit weird, like there's some sort of virus going on or something like that, also have a big bandage on their neck. So immediately as a viewer, it's pretty predictable what's going on. You're like, all right, I think I know what's happening. And it's one of those journeys where the adults and the parents don't notice kind of what's, in my opinion, kind of obvious. So we follow this journey of the kids trying to figure this out on their own. I like that aspect of it, a normal 80s, 90s trope where we follow this journey of kids kind of overcoming this on their own because the adults just don't believe them. So one of the kids is like, all right, let's find out what's going on. I'm going to sneak over to their house and we're going to find something, maybe some coffins or just something. And she sneaks over there, and while they're gone, because apparently they always work at night, that's when they always leave. So another red flag, obviously, but she goes over there, she starts looking around, right? Doesn't really find anything though. So she's like, okay, this is weird, but eventually picks this lock to this like fridge, opens up the fridge. What does she find? A bunch of blood. So the kids are like, okay, not only are they from like the Romania, Ukraine area, and they act like vampires, but we found blood. So definitely, these are some blood suckers. But then they run into the adults during the day, and they're like, that's weird. You're out during the daytime? What's up with that? How are you able to do that? Maybe they're not vampires, or even like flashing their cross in front of them. Nothing's happening. So the twist in this one is that the parents are not vampires, but who's definitely a vampire is actually their little son. So they use the kid is basically the vampire that's going to suck everyone's blood because he's very unsuspecting. And the parents are kind of tricky as hell because, usually in kind of vampire stories, you have to be invited into somebody's house. You can't just enter their house. And so they use this whole angle of, oh, can he come over and play some video games? And the kid's like, all right, sure, that's fine, which is a trick that definitely would have worked on me 100% of the time, especially back then. Hell, Even nowadays, someone is like, hey, you want to play some video games? All right, hell yeah, let's do it. Shit, he's a vampire. And a little different for this season, this episode actually ends like kind of on an ambiguous note, which I like that aspect of it. It's not a great episode. It has some fun moments. There's also some creepiness and also some tension, especially when the kids are like sneaking around at the house and the other people are starting to come in. You're like, oh, are they going to find them? What's going to happen to them? Are they going to kill them? What is really going to happen? Especially as a kid, that would probably be pretty scary. But overall, not a great episode. Like I mentioned, very predictable in a lot of ways, but still pretty fun. I think belongs in the 7th place for me. All right, up next at number 6 is going to be episode 8, The Tale of the Dark Music. So we're following mainly this kid and his mom. Their parents got divorced, so things are kind of tough. They're living in an apartment, and then eventually their uncle, the mom's uncle, passes away, and they inherit this bigger house. Slight problem though, because the house has like a haunted basement, or has like this little demon creature thing that lives in a part of the basement. And anytime they turn on the music, this thing kind of like comes alive and can take or, maybe even kill people. And as this kid moves into a new neighborhood, unfortunately for this kid, there's a bully that lives next door. It's kind of like one of those O'Doyle rules type kids, but he's just beating this kid up. Even at one point takes his bike and just throws it into oncoming traffic. So eventually as payback, this kid lures him into the basement of his house. He's like, come on, bully, throws one of his newspapers at him. And then the kid runs after him and follows him into the basement, and then he locks him down there. And then, kind of sinister for an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. He turns on the music and this kid either gets captured and pulled into another dimension, or this kid's just straight up dead. And then at the end of the episode, the kid even hears his little sister come into the house and is like just kind of saying like normal little sister things, just being annoying and kind of pissing him off a little bit. And he's even thinking about killing his little sister too. But yeah, this episode, it's got some fun tropes to moving into a new neighborhood. If you're being bullied, how you can get revenge on that. It's got some creepiness to it. Like I said, kind of a little sinister how he gets back at the bully. A pretty enjoyable episode, not an amazing episode, but yeah, there you go. The Tale of the Dark Music coming in at number 6 for me. Okay, up next at number 5 is going to be episode 2, The Tale of the Laughing in the Dark. So this episode is about kind of like a spook house at a carnival with this creepy backstory to it. This spook house might be haunted. There might be something pretty damn scary going on behind the scenes with this. So supposedly this spook house, there was a clown I can't remember, it's like 50, 60 years ago. This clown that worked in a carnival stole all the money from the carnival and then ran into this spook house. And then as the story goes, he basically just burned alive in there. There's some stuff in this episode that does kind of remind me of Welcome to Horrorland, that Goosebumps episode a little bit, not a lot of ways, but the spook house, just like in Horrorland, has like these crazy mirrors. It's the thing that we typically do see at carnivals and stuff. We get that cool little line that they give us in this episode, which is pick the right door and you'll go free. Pick the wrong door and there he'll be. It's kind of creepy, but this kid basically goes in there on a dare sort of to prove he's tough, grabs the clown nose, and then after that, some weird stuff starts happening around his house, right? So he runs back in there along with the nose to try to just give it back. He's like, I can't take enough of this. And if you're somebody like me that grew up on the creepy ass Ronald McDonald, Pennywise, of course, clowns are definitely pretty damn scary. And they talk about that kind of thing a little bit in the episode too. One of the girls in the Midnight Society can barely even listen to this episode or this story because she's so afraid of clowns, like a lot of us are. But I do like this aspect too of there's a little bit of like a guessing game ambiguity with this episode as well. It's like, okay, so at the end, the guy running the spook house, was he the clown? Is he just a normal regular guy who's just kind of creepy? Or is he a ghost as well? You've got that aspect. It kind of just keeps you guessing a little bit. Doesn't give you all the answers, which I like about this episode. But overall, as the kids would say, kind of a mid episode. Not great, but it's also not a bad episode by any means. Has some fun stuff to it. A little bit predictable at times. But yeah, The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, pretty fun episode overall. So there you go. That coming in at number 5. All right, up next at number 4 is going to be episode 6, The Tale of the Captured Souls. So this one's about a family that goes on a trip, on a vacation to this like lake house, bed and breakfast kind of a thing. And they're like, okay, weird. Doesn't seem like there's anyone here. And then all of a sudden they just meet this kid. And the kid's like, yeah, I'm running the place for the week. My parents are out of town on a cruise, right? And the parents like, okay, that's kind of weird. On top of it, this kid seems really weird and creepy and also seems like he's maybe from a different time indicating some stuff we'll see later on in the episode. But yeah, just weird stuff starts happening. There's also all these mirrors all over the place. When he's showing him their room, he's like, oh, don't worry about that. It's just kind of a tradition with this house. I like how in a Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, there's a mirror above the parents' bed and the dad lays down and the dad's like, oh yeah, I like this. But yeah, in this episode though, I think the set design is actually impressive for an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. There's some things here with like some of these trap doors and other compartments that are coming in and out that this kid pushes a button to make them kind of move and reveal themselves, which is actually, like I said, kind of impressive for an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. But basically what happened is this kid is a scientist and he's like 90 or 100 years old or something like that in reality, but he invented this machine to capture people's souls to keep him young, which the girl finds out. He wants to keep her young too, but she's gonna have to sacrifice her parents, which the process has already started. The parents are starting to age, like their soul is being taken from them. They need to nap all the time. They're just getting tired. They're acting kind of weird. Stuff's also happening a little bit to her as well, but eventually she discovers the truth, sabotages everything, and basically turns this kid back into his normal self. And the family's like, all right, we are getting out of here. But like I said, some fun set design with this episode. I like the setting. It's on like this lake house at this bed and breakfast kind of a thing. It's got some eeriness to it. It's this concept of like a family trip gone wrong. I like that aspect of it. Yeah, and overall, I think this is a pretty solid episode. It's a story we've definitely seen before, but it has enough uniqueness to this episode to make it enjoyable for me. So yeah, The Tale of the Captured Souls coming in at number 4 for me. All right, moving into the top 3. Up next at number 3 is going to be episode 5, The Tale of the Hungry Hounds. So this episode actually has a couple pretty scary moments, especially for kids. I mean, if you're old enough to know what's going on, it's actually pretty sinister. So this city girl is with her cousin for the summer. Her cousin lives on this farm, and up in the attic of the farm, they're finding some creepy stuff. They eventually find this chest that's locked. They don't really know much about that. And then it transports to like the next day or whatever. And they're playing with a Ouija board. And the Ouija board says some creepy stuff and also gives them a code to the chest. And she also notices when they find this picture of this girl's aunt, she looks basically exactly like her aunt. So her aunt died in a horse riding accident. And the family doesn't really talk about it too much. But they open up this chest and the little girl's going through all this stuff. There's smoke coming out of the chest. And then one of the girls puts on the aunt's riding jacket and then basically just transforms into the aunt, is like possessed, and takes them along on this journey. They eventually run into the guy who used to run the stables. He's now a ghost. And he tells us this story about this time, you know, when the girl never came back, the aunt never came back from horse riding because, you know, obviously she died. She forgot to feed the hounds. But yeah, he hears the hounds barking and stuff. He goes to check on them, and the hounds are so hungry that they actually try to eat the guy. And then he gets away from them, and then he has a heart attack, and that's how he died. But there's also a point here where the girl who's possessed, her friend, who is now like her aunt, but she's like a little bit evil, lets out the dogs, and the dogs start chasing her cousin with the intention of clearly trying to eat her. Because if you've ever seen hunting hounds before, these things are insane, especially when they're hungry. It's a crazy situation. But eventually this fox, the fox that's a part of that story, runs out of the barn and leads the dogs out, which saves them. Then eventually everything's okay. They take the jacket off her. She goes back to normal. Everything is okay. But episode definitely with some like sinister aspects to it, like the dogs eating humans. Definitely some creepiness to it with this farm. I like that setting a lot. And also one of those episodes, like I mentioned earlier, if you're old enough to really understand what's going on, you're like, oh, this is actually pretty scary. And another little twist on kind of like a summer break as a kid, if you're going off to visit family. But what could happen if you're snooping around in a family's creepy attic? But yeah, like I said, overall, a decent, pretty fun episode with some scary moments. So yeah, The Tale of the Hungry Hounds at number 3 for me. All right, up next at number 2 is going to be episode 3, The Tale of the Lonely Ghost. And this episode reminds me of Strode Realty from the Halloween franchise and the Myers house, that whole thing, because this girl's mom is a realtor and kind of like is representing this creepy house that's next door to them. But yeah, it's another one of those stories. It's a girl kind of visiting family. Her parents are scientists. They're away on this expedition, so she has to stay with her weird aunt. And then also her cousin, who is kind of like Rachel McAdams in Mean Girls. She's like just a bully to her and treats her like complete shit. And at one point is like, all right, you can hang out with me and my friends. You get the privilege of hanging out with us, but you have to go and stay one night in this creepy house, which, yeah, is definitely creepy, has a lot of eeriness to it. She has the keys to it because her mom represents the house, and they take her over there, and basically it is really haunted. There's even this mirror at one point, so she goes there for one night, doesn't end up staying the night, but weird stuff starts happening. There's these like words that get written all over the walls. I think it says help me or let me out or something like that. So the mom's like, all right, guys, your prank is ridiculous. You ruined the room. I need you to go over there and clean it up. So when they go over there to clean it up, the girl, the mean cousin, gets trapped in the mirror. And then the main girl of the episode is like, all right, I'll think about letting you out, but you have to promise not to be a little shit to the rest of us. She's like, okay. And I'm sure she kind of thinks about leaving her in there because she is definitely a little shit. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this room is haunted because a girl died in this room, and then their housekeeper of their house next door is actually the mom of the girl. They weave that into the story too, which adds like a little bit of extra stuff to the episode. But yeah, mainly why I have this episode number 2 is because it's kind of a fun, creepy twist on like a suburban neighborhood with like an eerie house in that neighborhood. And it's got some fun creepiness to it. So yeah, there you go. The Tale of the Lonely Ghost at number 2 in season 1 for me. All right, and coming in at number 1 is going to be episode 1, The Tale of the Phantom Cab. So in this episode, we're following 2 brothers on a hike, an older brother who kind of bullies the younger, nerdier brother, and on their hike, they get lost and kind of end up in a little bit of like another dimension in a way, and they have to solve this riddle basically in order to get out. And this episode's got some fun acting in it. The guy in the cottage, that guy is kind of like dollar store Jack Black. And not only do I just like the atmosphere of this episode, the setting of this episode in the woods with this creepy cottage, but along the way, there's some twists and turns. They meet this guy in the earlier part of the episode who leads them to the cottage and just kind of tells them this is the only way you're going to be able to get home. But actually turns out that guy is dead. And then later is the cab driver that the guy in the cottage is talking about that they need to get in his cab. So he's stuck here in the woods because he's cursed because he was not able to solve the riddle from the guy in the cottage, which is basically what's weightless you can see with the naked eye, and if you put it in a box, it makes the box lighter. That is essentially the riddle. I believe that's the same riddle that that guy had to solve. So apparently after all these years and all this time of thinking, he still wasn't able to solve it, but the nerdier, smart kid is able to solve it in the end, which the answer is, drumroll, a hole. Like I said, this episode does have some twists and turns. When they're in that guy's cottage, it has some weird ambiguity to it. What's this guy's true intention? What's really going on here? Which kind of keeps me like hanging around throughout the rest of the episode. It doesn't have anything really mind-blowing about this episode, but if you're like me, somebody who spent a lot of time, especially as a kid, hiking, camping in the woods and things like that, that adds a little extra to this episode. But overall, it's just a fun little episode. It's also kind of tense towards the end of the episode when they're in the cab and the cab is just about to crash, which will kill them unless they solve the riddle. I mean, that's pretty good. I also think just the whole angle of these different riddles adds a little something extra to the episode as well. But like I said, it's in the woods. They're like in this other dimension, which is fun. They meet these kind of fun, interesting characters along the way. And overall, yeah, I just think The Tale of the Phantom Cab is my favorite episode in season 1. And just overall an episode that I'll definitely remember from season 1 and has some good creepiness and eeriness to it and some interesting little twists along the way. And just overall, yeah, Tale of the Phantom Cab, I think it's just a fun episode. And that's why I have it number 1. But there you go, everybody. That is season 1 of Are You Afraid of the Dark ranked. Let me know down in the comments down below what some of your favorite memories of the show are. If you want some more videos from me right now, check out one of these videos next to me. I'll link both Goosebumps episodes right here next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. All of my social media links will be down below in the description as well if you want to follow me over there. But my name is Matt. Thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one.